Hello, Misfit entrepreneurs. This is Dave Lukas, and welcome to another episode of the Misfit Entrepreneur, where it is our job to help you unleash your inner misfit and break through to higher levels of success, wealth, and fulfillment by bringing you the best insight and information from the world's top entrepreneurs with a specific focus on their misfit side, the specific traits, habits, and secrets that have allowed them to thrive and succeed. As a reminder, if you're new to watching us on our YouTube channel, hit the subscribe button below. Give this video a like and comment as well. We do our best to respond to all comments as timely as possible. This week's Misfit Entrepreneur is Kelsey Sharon. Kelsey's an entrepreneur, author, podcast host, coach, and speaker. Even more importantly, Kelsey's a decorated veteran who served on the front lines in Afghanistan. She founded Brass and Unity, a boutique jewelry and apparel brand that incorporates elements of brass from weaponry into its products. The company donates 20% of net profits to help rehabilitate soldiers and first responders. Kelsey's story and companies have been featured everywhere from Elle, Fashion Magazine, Forbes, Good Morning America, The Today Show, Fox, CNN, even Ellen. And her own story is very inspiring, not just to those that learn of it, but for her, as overcoming her own challenges after years of war gave her the strength and mission to help veterans overcome the side effects of war, such as PTSD, homelessness, and preventing suicide. And she is fierce in her efforts for this. I asked her to come on to share her journey, entrepreneur lessons learned, and how to overcome the biggest challenges that life brings your way. So, Kelsey, are you ready to unleash your inner misfit?
Absolutely. Let's go.
Well, it is a pleasure to have you on, and I'm excited about this conversation. You've had one heck of a journey to get to where you're at, and I think that's where I want to start. Take, if you can, 3 to 5 minutes or so, and just tell us, how did you get to where you're at?
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for having me, and thanks for that intro. That was lovely. I'm just like everybody else. I was a person who was watching the media constantly back in the early 2000s, and I decided, after a significant amount of brainwashing, that maybe I should go fight in this war that we were fighting against. And so at the age of 18, I quit college after a few months and I joined the Army. And within a year, I was deployed to Afghanistan as an M777 155 millimeter howitzer gunner and a female searcher for the British military as well.
And so you went through that, and you had some challenges coming out of that, though. From reading your story, when you came back, there were things that happened there that gave you some struggles, gave you PTSD that you had to work hard to overcome over a period of years. Is that right?
Yeah. So my conclusion around that is that if anybody goes to war and sees half of what most of us seen, if you come back perfectly normal, we're going to have a different conversation. So I was a Canadian artillery gunner, but I also served alongside the American 101st as the 777 gunner. And then I was borrowed by the British military to go be a female searcher and to run and gun with those guys and grab the women and children and to search them while we were outside the wire. That operation went wrong. It's in the book. I'm not going to go through it too much. Yep. It's a part of my past. That's my past, but is not at all who I am anymore. And it is definitely a defining moment because it gave me the opportunity to decide, am I going to live a life worth dying for, or am I going to roll over and die? And so in those moments, I was given that opportunity after being diagnosed and overprescribed 11 different drugs while in country running a machine gun, that I wasn't going to allow our government and the labels they gave me to dictate my future and what I was going to do in this lifetime. So I was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder, traumatic brain injury, and several other lovely labels that I do not believe to this day. And I was able to overcome them using a lot of different support networks. Plant medicine was a major catalyst point in my changing and my growth, as well as having a community and a purpose, because that is ultimately what you lose when you no longer have the service you thought you would live the rest of your life in. So once I found purpose, it was a game changer, and off we went.
And that's something I really want to dig in with you today. Before we do, though, I actually want to start with veterans and then get into the entrepreneur side and how you overcame this stuff and what you learned about the mind and grit and that sort of thing. I think You and I talked before this and talked about a lot of things that are happening in the veteran community and a lot of stuff that people don't know. And I think it's important to bring awareness to it because we are indebted to people like yourself and others that have, gone and done the things that you've done to protect, the freedoms and everything that we have. And I know you're in Canada, and so we've had some discussions about Canada versus even the U.S., but there's still freedoms that are very important to protect, right? So what is it that people, the average listener, somebody watching this needs to really understand about the veteran community?
We're not broken people, and they need to stop treating us as if we are. We're not the individuals that need you to come along and tell us it's going to be okay. We know it's going to be okay, but we're kind of told from pharmaceutical companies and from individuals that have poor leadership among our ranks that we are broken and that we will stay that way. But that's just what happens when bad leaders arise to the top. So for me, I'm a big believer that these things happen for us and not to us, just like anything else in our life, just like anything that happens to anybody in their life. It is the perceptual change, and it is how you choose to view it. And because of how you view it will be your reality. And so for me, it's always been very simple. Our military and our veterans, they don't need you to fix us. You just need to untie our hands to let us fix ourselves. And that's kind of what you're seeing in the veteran space. And the understanding, post C word, because I don't want this to be taken down. Post C word, you're seeing so many different individuals who have left the service because they were not going to be compliant in something they felt strongly about. And I stand with those people because our military have already taken so many experiments and so many different frontline jobs to see how everyone's going to react. And we are very strong individuals, and that a lot of us are A-type personalities and we're not sheep. Most of us can fix ourselves if we're given the opportunity, the time and the space, instead of being frozen in time with medication. So most people think that veterans are these damaged individuals that will never heal, and they went and fought wars that we have no right to be in, and all of these things. And these can all be valid on all different levels, for sure. You can have your opinions, but ultimately veterans are some of the strongest people I have ever met on the face of this earth, because we have had the things that have happened for us. And so when those individuals are able to see that it's an empowerment and it's a tool, and your experience can be used to uplift your life, and they're just shown a different perspective, veterans heal, and veterans find purpose, and veterans create amazing companies and entrepreneurs and just community in this world. And you're seeing it across multiple platforms. If you look at people like Evan Hafer and Matt Best and Logan and JT, they have one of the largest coffee companies in the world that was started in the garage, because they're the type of people who don't accept no for an answer. And then you've got these incredible podcasts and people writing books, and you've got movies, and veterans are slept on. And that's what you're kind of seeing is like, if you just give us the space to figure our stuff out, we can not only overcome what happened to us, but we can flip it on its head and turn it into our tool to catapult us into something greater.
Now that's awesome. And so with that as a backdrop, somebody listening that says to themselves, you know what? Okay, I want to help the veteran community in the way that I can. I want to support them. Obviously, you mentioned like Black Rifle Coffee and some of those different ones. Well, buy their products. That's one way to support them and help them. Buy products like Brass and Unity and what you're doing, right? But what are things that people can do that really make a difference to help veterans for in their everyday efforts? What are the things that we should be thinking about and doing?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so glad you asked that, because our subset of population is, even though the military in America is so giant, right? We don't have that all over the world. So, in Canada and over in the UK, we're all NATO. We don't have the same type of community. Everyone in America has a brothers, uncles, sisters, cousin who served somewhere. That's just not like that here. So it's about opening up to community and about showing others that they can participate. You don't have to be military or veteran to help our community. You can be somebody who's empathetic towards the cause. And I actually had somebody on a retreat last week ask me the same question. I'm not a veteran, and I feel like I'm lying if I go into these organizations and ask if I can help. It's like, no. We need people like that. We need you to come in and say, hey, these are the expertise I have. How can I help a veteran? How can I help them get purpose? How can I show them that they can be in community again? And so what I would say is reaching out to some of these nonprofits. There's 46 active nonprofits, 46,000 active nonprofits in America around veterans. And maybe 1% of those is really doing heavy lifting. And so I have a list of those on Brass and Unity's website under donation. And those are the charities that Brass and Unity has worked with now we started this company in 2016. And so we have been working really hard with these nonprofits to not only be the vehicle that puts the money in the hands of those organizations, but to be there for events, to be there when they need help, to onboard individuals. And what I would say is, if you're truly wanting to help a veteran, help get them access, introduce somebody to them, give them an opportunity to show up and volunteer, or more than often, they just need a moment and they need someone to talk to. Just be a sounding board. We don't need you to fix us. We just need community. That's pretty much it.
I love it. Thank you. And thanks for sharing that. Like I said, I want to start with that and, give people some insight from somebody who is living it, doing it, been part of it and everything. So thanks for sharing that. I want to talk about the mind. We talk about mindset, we talk about conditioning, we talk about a number of different things, the subconscious on the show a lot. But you alluded to earlier, you had to overcome a number of things. You had to basically take charge and go do it and get through it on your own, right? And get rid of the pills, get rid of this stuff and everything, and just do it yourself, right? So talk to us about how we can take, for those that are maybe struggling in areas of stuff, how to take back control of the mind. And what else can you teach the audience about the mind and how to use it to reach their true potential?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, the mind is a funny thing. When you feed it really terrible things, it's going to feed you really terrible things. When you watch the news like a slow drip, when you listen to negative influences, when you listen to aggressive music, when you're around individuals that are constantly in a nihilistic mindset, you are pre-programming your brain subconsciously to also be similar to that. And that's not what we want. You hear a lot of people talk on these big platforms, well, you're the sum of the 5 people. But let's take a step back and acknowledge that it's not just the 5 people that influence us. It's the 5 podcasts. It's the 5 musicians. It's the 5 foods. It's the 5 surroundings. So you have to choose your network, where you go, what you do very carefully, because if you're not aware, everything you do, everything you interact with, it is subconsciously programming your mind. So there's this saying, like, if you eat shitty food, you're going to have a shitty result. Well, that's just a reality, because we understand that 70% of the serotonin that our mind runs on is made in our gut health. And we know that our gut health most of the time is so broken down by pre-processed foods and medications that no wonder so many of us struggle with mental health. Forget social media. You get all these things slapped together and people are struggling. So the mind is a funny thing where if you're not conscious and you're not aware, that thing will run amok in your brain if you do not get a handle on it. And so what I would always say is, I learned this really great concept, and it's very simple. It's like, awareness is the finish line. Once you're consciously aware of something, you have the ability to change it. But if you're on autopilot in this life and you are going from A to B to C, and you're not even sure how you got to the store, you just were there. You're not even sure how you picked up your kids. You just knew you had to be there at that time. You're not living a conscious, aware life. And it's not about, some spirituality about being conscious. It's like being aware of what you're doing throughout your day. It's about, hey, why am I grabbing a second cup of coffee? Am I tired? Did I not eat enough? Did I need more water? Instead of just grabbing the cup of coffee and downing it. It's about being conscious of the actions you take in the day, what you listen to, what you eat, who you're around, and who gets access to you. Because don't forget for a single second that your time is really important, because if you're giving it to somebody else that's unwell, they're going to make you unwell. That's just the reality. So you have to be mindful of what you're putting near your body and your mind all the time.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I love that you bring up awareness. In fact, in my book years ago, one of the things that I wrote in the chapter on how we're conditioned is awareness as the catalyst to change. Once you're aware to something, you can actually do something about it, right? And so that is the most critical thing. And the other thing, too, that I think is really important for people to, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, to think about is, I've always thought, like, our beliefs lead to our emotions lead to our actions, right? Or our emotions lead to our thoughts lead to our actions, and our actions ultimately lead to our results. So if you take out like everything in the middle there, and you just start with beliefs and you look at what's at the end, it's your results. But most people don't like know, like, where do my beliefs come from? What shapes my beliefs, right? And it's like everything you just talked about, like these influences, these things that we allow into our lives and our mind and everything shape our beliefs. And like half the time people say they believe something, they don't even know why they believe it. Because it's been conditioned in them or put there by somebody else just because that's what they were told or whatever. And the ultimate, I think, in personal power is when you learn to live from true choice and not, be beholden to that, because your beliefs do determine those end results that you have in life. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on kind of that.
Yeah, and I fully agree. Look, I mean, I loved how this kind of happened this year. There's an incredible podcast called Trigonometry with these two guys, Francis and Constantine, and they do something that I think is so important. They go out on the streets of London right now, and they ask people who are at the pro-Hamas or pro-Palestine Palestine versus, Israel. They go and they ask these people who are holding signs, do you know what that says? Do you know what you're promoting? And do you know why you're promoting it? And 9 out of 10 people go, I was just handed this. I don't know what river. I don't know what sea. And I don't know what I'm talking about. And all that shows is people are sleepwalking through life. In these really monumental, huge things that are happening in the world. People are picking sides based off of absolutely nothing. And this could go towards what you do in your life. This could go towards what your belief system is, your religious system is. I come from a family that was religious. I am not a religious individual anymore. I'm not, because it wasn't something I chose. It was chosen for me. And because of that, I don't trust it. I need to myself, anytime I go to believe in something, or I really want to put my heart into something, I need to know A to Z, everything about that to the best of my ability before I make a decision whether I want to put all my life and my eggs into that basket. And I think that goes for anything that we do in this life, anything we believe, anything we listen to. You have to approach everything with critical thinking. And that is something that is not taught in our school systems anymore. It's not something that's taught in our daily life, because critical thinking creates human beings that push back. And that is something that has been farmed out. And we see that a lot, especially you having a podcast, myself having a podcast. When you're constantly talking to all these different people, you start to unravel, are these people's beliefs for real? Do they believe it? Yeah. And more often than not, you break it down and you're like, oh my God, this person doesn't actually know what they believe. They don't know why they believe it. And they don't know why they do what they do. They just think it's the thing to do because everyone's doing it. That's troublesome to me.
Right. Well, and the best conversations are when you find those people that truly have thought it through and know why they believe. You may not agree with them, but but you respect them because they actually have taken the time to really think, right? In a world that we live in today where it's so instant and everything is just to the next thing, I often say, we can't even wait for the microwave anymore. We stop it with 3 seconds left. We live in this instantness all the time where nobody thinks anymore. And that is one of the greatest powers that you have as an entrepreneur, is that ability to think differently, that ability to think and find ways and innovate that where others aren't. And, to be conscious, as you said before, about what's happening around you. And I think that a lot of people miss that. A lot of people miss this gift, this easy thing that you've got right there, that if you use it, you can, you can get light years ahead of others, like in business and, life and other areas, just by using this thing that we have, that we've been conditioned not to use so much now,
I think that it seems easy, but when you actually drill down to who you are, why you think, why you do what you do, you're then forced to face the choices you've made. Why you've acted the way you've and you have to confront it. And I think that's why so many people, it may seem easy to break these systems down, but they don't, because fear is standing in the way. And that 4-letter word kills more dreams, more ideas, more thoughts, more innovation than anything else will ever kill.
All right. So Kelsey, you mentioned something I think that's really important, is that fear kills more dreams, kills more opportunities than really anything else. And we were talking about how just the act of thinking is becoming harder and harder for people to do, not just because of the instant society, but because of the things people have to face, and they're not willing to confront them or go through what they need to do. That there's a lot that goes with that. It's probably a podcast conversation for another day. But I think in order to face that fear, in order to at least get to that level where you can live from true choice, or at least know what you stand for, your principles, and that, it's going to take grit. You're going to have to really hardcore go through these giant roadblocks in your head and that are in front of you that you don't want to go through. And you had to do that to overcome some of your own challenges, right? So talk to us about grit, what it means to keep going until you overcome the biggest obstacles in your life.
Oh my gosh. So we went through something really aggressive, just like right before COVID. Everyone else, everyone went through something with their businesses during COVID, whether they want to admit it or whether they want to talk about it or not. Prior to COVID, I had started this company, Brass and Unity, on my kitchen table. Like kitchen table, art therapy, was just trying not to want to die every day. Like that was the legitimate reasoning. And it got to a point where I went from the kitchen table to 1 year later being on Kevin Hart and Ellen DeGeneres and all these massive platforms. And our business boomed very rapidly. And what happened with that was right before COVID, we had over 200 hand-picked retailers we were working with and selling our products to. And once COVID hit, we were a retail in-person business. And once COVID hit, it shut down. And we lost all of our business overnight in March of 2020, like gone. It was a wild thing to witness and to see everything that I had built to not only save myself, but save my friends and my community from themselves was now just crumbling beneath my feet. And there was nothing I could do. I thought there was nothing I could do. But in those moments, that's where you decide, you realize who you really are when you've got the pressure is boiling and you have people's mortgages on the line. And you have people's healthcare on the line, and you have people's homes and roofs over their head on the line. You don't just get to sit there, at least in my opinion, and roll over and let it happen. And in those moments, you really find out who you are. And I wasn't going to allow everything I had just been built to be taken away from a government I didn't believe in. And so I decided you want to play the game? I'll play your game then. And I got my medical license, and I became a mask manufacturer for the Canadian government. And I said, cool, I'll transform my factories from producing jewelry and we will make masks. If you want to tell me I can't work and my people can't work, but I can do, okay, cool. So I signed up, paid $5,000. That's all it takes in Canada, got my medical license, and I started importing hundreds of thousands of masks to Ontario hospitals. And it was enough to do one big order with the government where we could bridge the gap from going from a retail business to an online business to give us enough time to keep the roof over our head and the lights on. And when our building decided they were going to raise our rent illegally 50%, we made a hard decision. We said, you know what? This building doesn't define what we do. This doesn't define how we are as a business. This doesn't define who we help. This doesn't define me. And I had to have a hard look in the mirror and go, is this business about me staying alive? If this business crumbles, does this mean I crumble? Or does this mean that I'm going to take this opportunity and I'm going to flip it? And again, we did that. We walked away from a $250,000 build out. We walked away from the most badass office you'll ever see, legitimately, with like a hangout and a chill space and meditation and a podcast studio and everything I ever dreamt I could have. We walked away from it. And I said, I have to get rid of who I have to get rid of. And we're going to go down to a skeleton crew and we're going to start this thing back up again from the ground up. Because I believe so deeply in what I'm able to do that it doesn't matter what I do, whatever the hell I do, I will win at. And so when it comes to grit, it's really simple. You get two choices in life when somebody throws something at you. You decide, I quit now because it's just too hard. I can't do it anymore. Or you wake up the next day and go, all right, let's go again. And let's go again. Because it's never, and that saying is so true. I was a high-level competitive fighter. And the one thing I learned from that was it does not matter how many times I got kicked in the face and knocked out. If I want to be the best, you have to act accordingly. So every time they would send another bill or another cease and desist towards the government saying, you guys can't work, you can't have employees in there, I just crumpled that shit up and tossed it in the garbage and said, try again tomorrow. Because I'm not going to quit. at what I believe in. And if I believe that these silly little paracord bracelets will save people's lives, and I've been able to prove it, then I'm not going to quit now and no one's going to tell me otherwise. So you make those decisions every day in your life. Am I going to get up? Am I going to work out? Or I'm going to say I'm too tired? Am I going to pick McDonald's, or am I going to go home and make the fucking steak? You make the decision every day in everything you do in your life. Am I going to be late to pick up my kid, or am I going to leave 10 minutes early and make sure I am there and they know it and I'm never missing a pickup? You make the decisions. And every decision you make is going to have a rollout catalyst afterward. And you have to be good with that decision. So if you decided I'm sleeping in that day and it started a point of you not working out again, you have to take responsibility and ownership for how you decide to act in that moment. It's not the moments the easy moments that you become great. It's the hard moments that when you show up on the days that you don't want to, that's how you become great.
Two things I think really important too, as you say that, and they're the critical things. And anybody who's listening to you that's gone through the same thing. In fact, my business during that time was in the travel space. And so overnight, travel was turned off. So we had to, and we were a SaaS company, and so we had to figure that out. And we did. We actually grew more during that time than we ever did for the things that we did, because we didn't put our head in the sand and go, oh, the whole thing shut down like everybody else. We turned around and we said, all right, let's get all the market share we can during this time, because everybody else is running scared. And that's what we did.
Right.
And that actually led to the sale of the company, for a really nice exit. But two things: choice, right? So it comes down to all the choices that you make lead you to where you're at, and the choices that you make every single day, every single moment, impact you and others. And the second thing is radical personal responsibility. Two things that I think we've really lost today, right, is more of a society, not entrepreneurs so much. Entrepreneurs, we get it. Entrepreneurs, we get that the choices we make have a big impact, and we got to take responsibility for them, because at the end of the day, it's on us. Right. So I think those two things are absolutely critical. And anybody watching, listening to this, if you haven't taken responsibility for the choices you make and the things in your life and where you're at, it's time to start. Because that's the answer out. That's the answer to a lot of the world's issues and problems. It's one of the reasons I say entrepreneurs are the answer to a lot of things, because nothing happens without an entrepreneur. Government doesn't get a tax dollar without an entrepreneur. It doesn't happen, right? And so, entrepreneurship is a key to that. And so for me, those two things really, really stand out with that. You mentioned building your business. You mentioned like having to pivot and do the things you do and play the game, right? And that sort of thing. What else have you done to build your brand and business and make it successful? What else has been something that you think other entrepreneurs should learn or, put to work for themselves?
Yeah, look, I'm a big believer of being in the room. Nobody is ever going to tell me no. It doesn't work well for them. They found that out the hard way. I will kick your door in. If I have to show up, I'll do it. If it means I fly on the wing, I'll fly on the wing. I don't really care what it takes. I'll do what it takes. And that I knew that in that moment when I got on the plane, when I was pregnant with my son, with a backpack full of samples to a trade show I had no business being at, with no ticket for, and somehow weaseled my way in. And because of that, I got 10 retailers by standing in a hallway of somewhere I wasn't supposed to be. And because of that, I sat down at a dinner table, and right beside me was Jesse Tyler Ferguson's husband. And because of that, I was on Ellen. And because of that, I was with Beth Bears. And it all spun into these things. And what I realized is you have to put yourself in the room. You have to make yourself known. Most people are uncomfortable with themselves. Most people are uncomfortable with how they present themselves, how they act, their voice, hearing their voice. I don't know about you, but when you started podcasting, having to listen to your voice back for the first little bit's a little like weird and cringy. And it's about knowing who you are. And I feel like most people don't know who they are. And if you don't know who you are, how are you going to know how you're going to show up in these moments of opportunity? Are you going to show up, or are you going to cower and get nervous and afraid? And so for me, it was being in the room. And I'm not saying you have to be in every room, but you need to strategically pick the rooms you're going to be in. And when the opportunity presents itself, you need to get bold, and you need to walk up to the circle of people that are all the CEOs and all the people. And you need to walk up with your shoulders back and stick your hand out and go, hi, I'm Kelsey Sharon. I'm the CEO of this company, and this is why you want to know me. And you do that over and over and over. And there was actually a moment I can remember, and I'll make this very quick. I was on a flight after doing my very first podcast. I was asked on this incredible show called the Veteran Project Podcast with Tim Kay. And he does a very different type of show where he follows you around with a camera for a week and just gets to know you. And he goes, hey, will you come to Texas? I did this show. I was flying home. And this would have been, I think, oh my gosh, this was years ago now. It was the first person who had taken notice of me outside the fashion world. And I flew home and there was a gentleman sitting on the seat in front of me. And I could see he was some type of SF dude. Just the way he carried himself, the way he sat. And I tapped him on the shoulder. And of course, he responded like one would. And he goes, hi. And I said, hey, do you work for BRCC? And he's like, I do. And he just looked at me very strangely. And he's like, how did you know that? And I said, well, your demeanor, yada, yada, blah, blah. He gives me his business card and he goes, who are you? And I responded, and I remember this moment. I responded and I said, don't worry about it. You're going to know who I am. You give me 5 years. And within 5 years, I made sure that every single person, every major podcast, every fucking story, you name it, if it had anything to do with a bullet casing, it was around my name. If it had anything to do with helping veterans and suicide prevention, you knew I was involved. And I made sure that I inserted myself in places that I did not technically belong. And there is a hierarchy in the podcast space. There is a hierarchy in the veteran world. There are gatekeepers. And so whether anybody wants to admit that or not, that's not on me. That's the reality. And so I made sure that every single time I went near a gatekeeper, they knew exactly who I was. They knew exactly what I was about and why they were going to say yes right off the bat. Otherwise, I was going to show up at your door because I deserved to be in those rooms and I deserved to be having a seat at that table. And I made sure that I did just that. And so it's about being bold. You have to believe in yourself, but you have to first off know who the fuck you are before you even start. If you don't know who you are, how do you expect others to know who you are? That's the sad reality. Most people don't know who they are, why they do what they do, or what they want to do in this world at all.
Well, most people don't know who they are, and most people don't get what they want because they don't know what they want because they don't know who they are, right? So it all goes back to that self-awareness, back to awareness again, of understanding, who you are, what you stand for, what your principles are, and that grounds you. Then you don't have the imposter system. You don't have the questioning of yourself and all that type of stuff. Like you talked about, like hearing my voice. I could care less how my voice sounds. It's my voice. It's the way it is, right? So somebody likes it, great. Right. If you don't, then don't watch. I don't care. You know what I mean? Because I'm me. That's what it is. And so, as I hear you say that, and a lot of these things, I think probably you had some of it inherently. It's just who you are by your personality. But I think some of this too, that, you took from some of your training and stuff from the front lines too. Are there any other lessons or any other things that you feel were really important that you learned from being in the front lines that have helped you succeed as an entrepreneur that maybe you haven't shared already?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I don't think it comes from the military at all. It comes from when I was a fighter. I went into that mentality in the military with that already. I started fighting at 4. My last fight, I was 19 years old, and I fought internationally. Taekwondo. So I became a national champion at 12, and after that, it was all I wanted to do. And what I learned in those moments was nobody was going to make weight for you. Nobody was going to put a sauna suit on and skip in the sauna. Nobody was going to skip meals. Nobody was going to do 2-a-days. You had to do it. It was an individual sport from the get-go. I was an individual fighter from the very get. So I was taught that mentality very young. I started doing 2-a-days at 7. And so I knew early on who I was. And who I was somebody that, based off my 5-foot stature, that unless you knew how small I was, you were going to think I was 7 feet tall. And that to me isn't about trying to be anybody that I'm not. That's just how bright my light shines. And I'm okay with that. I have no issue with that. That carried over really well into the entrepreneur space because I'm okay with being vocal. I'm okay with making you uncomfortable. And I'm okay with being the person in the room that people turn when you walk in. Because I think that we all have something special. But none of us are comfortable leaning into that because we want to be liked. And here's the thing that I learned a long time ago. And I heard this, and it was like one of the greatest illustrations. We have 8 billion people in the world. And everybody just wants to be liked, but there's 8 billion people in the world. You cannot be what everyone wants you to be. So I learned a long time ago, there is going to be core principles I will follow. And if that means you either love me or you hate me, I'm good with that. I don't need you to love what I do, how I talk, how I do it, with whom I do it. That's not my problem. Your opinion of me is none of my business. I do not care. I care about how I'm perceived in the space of the people I'm helping, my family, my child, and my husband. And the rest of it is noise. And that's really as simple as it is.
Yeah, an anecdote to that. I don't know if you've heard this before, and I probably don't have the percent right, but I think it's close. There's they did studies on this, and like if you walk into a room full of people, immediately 30% of the people don't like you just from looking at you. You don't have a chance.
Yeah.
They're not going to like you. It's just the way that it is, right? So focus on those that do, and that's where the magic happens and stuff too. That's, again, once you know yourself, once you really understand who you are, that stuff doesn't bother you anymore. And I think that's a critical thing. And so it sounds like you learned that from being a fighter and everything too. So last question on this topic around business and stuff. And then I got one more before we get to your Misfit 3. That's going to be an interesting one. Maybe some fireworks with that one. But leadership. What have you learned about leadership through your journey to this point?
A real leader will never ask you to do something they wouldn't do themselves. And that is one of the biggest lessons I learned. I had so many people in the military that would tell me what to do, but wouldn't dare do it themselves. And I thought very quickly, well, that's obviously not a leader. I've seen that living in Canada. I now know very publicly what a leader is not and what it is. In my business as well, I've had to learn how to manage people and their styles. And because not everybody perceives things a certain way, not everybody is willing to follow my lead in what I do. I live I would consider a more intense lifestyle than most people are ready to handle. But that's because I prefer to live my life like I'm going to die tomorrow. So I'm good with that. So in terms of leadership, I learned a long time ago that I'm not going to be the leader for everybody, but there is going to be a subset of people that are going to really see what I'm doing and know that if I'm asking you to do it, it's because I've not only been through it, walked through it, figured it out, but I've then come back and shown you how to do it. So I am the type of leader, the type of coach, the type of speaker where I'm very forward, I'm very intense, but I am because I know what it means and I know what you need to be able to get through that next step. And it's not going to be easy. And it's not going to be fun. And it takes somebody to distract you enough as you're walking through the dark to believe that you're actually going to get through to the light.
No, that's a great point. I love that. All right, my last question for you. Like I said, maybe some fireworks with this. So a lot of people watching this, US based, around the world, different places. You're in Canada. Couple two-part question. Number one, what do we need to know about what's happening in Canada so that we can make sure that we don't maybe succumb to some of those things here in the States and elsewhere? And number two, best advice that you can give to other Canadian business owners that may be watching.
Okay, number one, you're not all seeing America, and most of my listeners are in America as well. And so I do my best to make this known. You guys are not seeing everything. Let me say that again, and let me say it slowly. You are not seeing everything because the CRTC and Bill C-11 is making sure you don't. Do we understand what that means? For those that don't, let me give you a quick overview. Canada has a bill in place that only a few other countries in the world have: Russia, China, North Korea, and Canada. Okay? That means that if I don't run a VPN, I won't see this episode. If I don't run a VPN, I can't see our news outlet, even though they're state-run propaganda anyway, so nobody wants to see it, but I can't. I can't see things outside of Canada. I can't see anything because they've made it that way. And the CRTC has openly and publicly colluded with Google to make sure that we cannot see our own content and it cannot leave this country. So when you're like, but Kelsey, you only have 3,000 subscribers on YouTube. Really? For your show being that big? Yeah, well, that's what happens when you're targeted by the CRTC. That's how that works. So look, Canada is going through a very massive regime change. And I'm going to say the word regime because a couple of years ago, CSIS, our FBI, came out and stated and publicly showed that our current leader is being paid by the CCP. Okay. So that's the Chinese Communist Party. This isn't like propaganda. This is like, hey, our intelligence came out and said, we have a problem and it's bad and it's embedded and no one's listening. So that's number one. Number two, Canada we've got the bill stopped temporarily. Canada has been pushing, and you've heard me on platforms talking about this, called MAID, Medical Assistance in Dying. Medical assistance in dying is fine if you are terminally ill over the age of 18 and can make your own decision. Canada has now extended to children down to the age of 12 and the mentally ill. And let me tell you why that's a problem for you, my friends. Because in America, you have certain states that are now extending. Did you know that? That there's states in the United States where you can go and kill yourself using taxpayer dollars with a doctor. The reason I have a problem with that, several reasons. I believe that you can get through anything unless you are terminally ill and in excruciating pain. You can get through anything, regardless of what your doctor tells you. Most of them are paid off. Drug pushers. So when you've got MAID extending to children and to the mentally ill, that means vulnerable population and manipulatable individuals who are going through a depression. We have a organization in Canada that is pushing MAID called Dying with Dignity. And they're now saying that rape victims should use MAID and that people in prisons should get access to MAID so they don't have to live life sentences. Furthermore, if your child who is 16 years old walks into an emergency room and says, I would like to enact MAID, well, guess what? Your parental rights are gone and you no longer get to protect your children. So Canada's got some weird, uncomfortable things happening, like tampons in the men's bathroom. I don't know. Or offering pap smears to men. And you know why that's a problem? Because I can't even get in for a cancer screening, but apparently he can. So Canada's doing these weird things that are distracting people, because that's all this is a massive slow drip distraction. And they're distracting us from, as they change bills and as they change laws very quietly, which take away your parental rights, which put SOGI in schools, which teaches sexual orientation and gender identifications to kindergartners. When you start looking in the background of things that are happening, the reason why Americans need to pay attention, truly pay attention, because we're only about 18 months in front of you. If you guys think for a single second that you guys are immune because you have states' rights, you're out of your mind. That's why you had the TikTok bill. Remember that? That's called Bill C-11 under TikTok. So we have these problems, and we also have the Chinese training in Canada with our military. So back in 2020 and 21, the CCP had people coming to our largest ranges and training off the island in British Columbia and in the capital of Canada. You know what's really funny about that? That's a couple-hour drive to America. So if you guys aren't aware of the constant flanking you're having come through Panama, around through Canada and down to the US, I'm sorry, but you need to wake up because this is a concern for everyone. So Canada itself is a really great breeding ground and amazing experimental country. We were the first to have the vaccines pushed on the military. We were the first to have vaccines pushed on children. We were the first to put in bills like Bill C-11 in the freedom-loving world. And we were the people who started the trucker protest because we're tired of it. But the sad fact is, Canada is a really good opportunity for foreign countries to see how far we can push populations. And Canada is a good example of how bad it can go and how quickly it can go that way. And we're on track to have the worst 30-year economic downturn Canada has ever seen. And we are, for the first time in history, have actually lowered our life expectancy in this country. So America should really pay attention because your hat is on fire.
Well, and I asked that, and I had you share that because you're right. A lot of people don't know. So with that said, kind of part two then, what's your advice to Canadian business owners? Because they're going through a lot of the same stuff you are, right? Okay.
Yeah, they are. Get a VPN. I'm not affiliated with ExpressVPN at all, but I use them religiously the second I come back into the country. I'm not kidding. Get a VPN. Find a way to upload your content in America, not in Canada, because you'll have what happens to me, which is legitimate censorship. Nobody can see our content. Nobody can share our content. When Joe Rogan reposted a piece of my content, it got taken down in 17 hours. So you got to understand, when The powers that be do not want your voice heard. They're going to do everything they can to make it not. But the thing that you also have to realize is there is a massive group of us in Canada across this nation who want this country to go back to the way it was, who want this country to be the free place it was that I went and fought for the first time. People have asked me, Kelsey, you talk so much garbage about this country. Why don't you just leave? It's like, well, okay, I talk garbage about what's going on to this country, but I love this country and I love the people in it that are from here and not abusing their right to be here, because that is a big problem we're having. And that's why I can't get into hospitals. So the thing that we have to understand is if you are a Canadian business, one of the best things you can do if you are a content creator is have somebody in America start uploading your content for you, because that is how you get around the CRTC. Using a VPN to be able to access information. Reaching out to groups like Vets for Freedom. I know they're a veteran group, but I'm telling you, we have access to everyone else that's not a veteran who is awake and willing to fight for this country, because we believe deeply that this country has an opportunity to be saved. And that's why I haven't left it yet. Because I do believe wholeheartedly that the place that we fought for the first time is worth fighting for again. But we can only do that when we have strength in numbers. And you saw that during the trucker protest. Yeah. You saw that everywhere. We have to stand up for ourselves and we have to speak up. And the way you do that is band together, because you are much stronger when you have others than you are standing out alone. And they count on that.
And I think I say this even here in the States and elsewhere, it's going to be led by the entrepreneurs. Those are, I mean, you even look at, things that are happening in New York from entrepreneurs, even after the latest decision that happened. Right. So we as entrepreneurs have a lot more power, I think, than people realize. Like I said, no government even gets a tax dollar without entrepreneurs. So we just have to remember that. And we have to, utilize that and do it in the right ways. I love how you distinguish between the fact that, you may complain or you may share your whatever the word is, your dislikes, but it's because you love it and you love the country and you want it to get better, right? And I think that's the same for all of us. And it's a great way to end it before we get to your Misfit 3. The message today from you is just on all sides is really, I think, important for people to understand. So, okay, it's time for Kelsey's Misfit 3. These are the 3 things that she wants you to take that you can put in your life, your business, make a difference for yourself starting today. And the way that I always frame this to every guest that comes on the show is I say, hey, look, if you're going to leave this earth tomorrow, and you can only leave behind your 3 best pieces of wisdom to the generations that come after you to help them live their best life, what would those 3 things be? So, Kelsey, what are your Misfit 3?
My first one is turn the news off. I know that sounds simple, but you would be shocked at how difficult that is for people to disconnect themselves from the mainstream media. You're not missing anything. You're not missing out on anything. When I came home from deployment, I was glued to the news because I needed to feel like I was still knowing what was going on. So when I say remove the news from your life, do it as rapidly as possible. I'm talking about the mainstream media. I'm not talking about Substack and people like Glenn Greenwald and Michael Schellenberger. I'm talking about get rid of the toxicity in your life that is constantly making you feel fearful. The media has done a brilliant job of doing so, of slow dripping you, frog and boiling pot, to being fearful of this beautiful, amazing, gorgeous, loving, open world that actually exists in front of us. That is so important. Change what you do when it comes to your habits. What I do today is going to directly impact how I live my life in 6 months. So even though I wasn't feeling well today, and I'm having a whole situation with my teeth, I knew if I decided not to do the things I said I would do, I would be disappointed with myself. So when you are changing your habits, you need to be conscious of how they're going to affect your life, meaning what you eat, how you sleep, and how you move. If you're not moving your body every day, you are harming yourself irreparably. I can't even see. This is what happens when my mouth is a mess. It is
we get it.
Long-term damage. My tongue is still swollen. Just bear with me. It is long-term damage when you're not putting the one body that you have first. It is not selfish to show up for yourself. It is actually damaging if you don't put yourself first. That is one of the biggest takeaways I've learned over this past 10 years is I have to put myself first or I am no good to anybody else around me, including my family, my business, or those that I am choosing to support in this life. And the other one might be a little controversial. And there is no shame on any of what I'm about to say. So please know this. If you are on large doses of pharmaceutical intervention, I highly encourage you to find a holistic doctor or a functional medicine doctor to look at whether the reality is that you need to be on those or not. And the reason I'm stating that is I was on 11 different drugs for my entirety of my 20s. And the long-term repercussions of being on medication that I did not need to be on, that was holding me in place and stopping me from healing, that was keeping me in a mindset that was not growth, but only suicidal. I want you to take a look around at your life and go, am I depressed because I'm comparing myself to everyone on social media? Am I depressed because I'm not taking accountability for what I do every day, my actions, whether I move, how I sleep? Am I death scrolling at night and now I'm not sleeping well? The reason I say that is medication has a place and it is very helpful for a lot of people. But I'm sorry, we have a population of young adolescents who has been medicated since day one, who don't know a life outside of medication, who do not give their brain the neuroplasticity opportunities to grow and heal. Our doctors tell us when you're depressed for life. They told me I have major depressive disorder. I will never heal from that. They told me I had postpartum. They told me I had PTSD, told me I had a TBI. So by definition, I qualify for MAID in Canada, by the way. And what is really wild to me is I have never wanted to live more, to love more, to be more present in my life than the second I was able to get off of those medications and lean into the healing side of myself. And so there's no shame on being on any of these, but I will tell you that Adderall is going to break down your nervous system and is going to cause you so many focus issues. Antidepressants, we now know that if you just walk 30 to 40 minutes briskly a day, it is 12 times more effective than an antidepressant. We do understand that when you eat processed food from a box in the middle of the grocery store, you are setting yourself up for failure. Get healthy, watch what you put in your mouth, and watch everything else around you change. But you do not need to be on 3 to 4 SSRIs. You do not need to be on a sleep medication. You need to turn your phone off and put it in another room. You need to work out once a day. You need to drink a gallon of water a day. And you need to have blue light glasses at 6 p.m. and actually give yourself a start time and a stop time at the end of the day. This is not rocket science, but we have been manipulated into believing that we need all of these external things to be grounded, healthy, happy humans, when we've seen that the more we medicate, the opposite happens. Give yourself the time to heal, find someone to talk to, and to know that you will heal if you give yourself the opportunity. But if you stunt yourself by just medicating the problem and band-aiding the issue, you're going to hold yourself back decades. I did 10 years like that, my entirety of my 20s. And in that time frame, I got married and I had a child. And I don't remember the first 3 years of my son's life. And what I will tell you is I would give anything to be able to have those memories. But because I was so drugged out of my mind, I did not know up from down. So I would encourage you to change the way you eat, to change what you watch, to start moving your body even when it's uncomfortable. And to know that if you implement these small changes, in 6 months from now, you will not be the same person. Absolutely not.
Kelsey is an excellent Misfit 3. I love the conviction in that last one. And there are so many of those things that I've learned and stuff too. And it is practical. So I don't think it's controversial. I think it's something that people need to think about. So thanks for sharing that. If people do want to learn more about you, where should they go?
So because I do a million things, it depends on what you want to know. But if you want to listen to me talk to incredible individuals like yourself and others, the Brass and Unity podcast just hit its 200th episode yesterday. I'm really proud of that. I have a book called Brass and Unity. It is turning into a movie, so you'll see that soon enough. Brass and Unity jewelry. You can go into Brass and Unity. We ship all over the world. We give 20% of that net proceeds to veteran organizations all over the globe. If you want to work with me as a client or come to any of our retreats or understand themselves better and just get to the next level, KelseySharon.com. And that's where you can book speaking and coaching with me.
Perfect. We'll link to all that in the show notes. No offense, the best show notes in the business for reasons I will talk about more in a second. But first, for those of you that are new to the Misfit Entrepreneur, this is your first episode with us. Welcome. It is such an honor to have you with us. And I hope you become a regular subscriber and listener. And for those of you that are with us week in and week out, I cannot thank you enough for your support of the show. You are what makes this go in over 100 countries every single week. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And go out and check out the show notes for this episode. They are the best in business. Why? Because I do them myself as part of my personal growth routine. Every single week, I build time in where I go back through these episodes with great guests like Kelsey, and I take my best pieces of wisdom, tips, tricks, and things that I think you should know, and I share those with you. So go out and check those out. And then go out and give this episode a rating and review. Like and comment on it. Help share Kelsey's message, because we all know, and I say this in every episode, one great episode can change someone's life. Maybe something that Kelsey shared today was that missing link you were looking for to get to your next level. So share this with others. And again, Kelsey, thank you so much for coming on, sharing all your wisdom and insight today.
Thanks for having me, guys. I really do appreciate your time. And just know, as we're leaving, you don't have to live this way. You can get better, you can heal, and you can grow. So lean in.